My name is John Passfield. I'm going to read from my novel, Pauline Johnson, Know Who I Am. The title of this reading will be Pauline Johnson, Video 8, Comments on Pauline. Here's the cover of the novel, Pauline Johnson, Know Who I Am, a photograph of Pauline Johnson in 1912, which is now 110 years ago, since we're into 2022, a novel by John Passfield. Here's a summary, which I put on the back cover. Pauline Johnson was born on the Six Nations Reserve in Ontario, Canada. Was she American, British, or Canadian? Was she Mohawk, English, or mixed? She added up her assets and her liabilities and decided that the Pauline that the world would see would be Pauline the performance artist, Pauline on stage. As for the real Pauline, she would keep that to herself. Here's a note on terminology, which I printed on the back of the title page. Such terms as First Nations, Aboriginal, Indigenous were not in common usage at the time at which the events of the novel take place. To refer to her mother's people, the historical Pauline Johnson used the terms English and white. To refer to her father's people, she used the terms Indian, Mohawk, and red. While the novel's fiction, I have used Pauline Johnson's terms throughout the novel in the interest of historical accuracy. Why are there novels that don't tell you everything that you'd like to know? Here are some comments about the main character of this novel. Excuse me, just clear my throat here. Pauline Johnson. She's living her life in the present tense. So why are all these comments in the past tense? And in each case, when was this comment spoken during the life and career of the main character? In what circumstances was it spoken? Who is the person who is saying these words? How well does this person know Pauline Johnson? How reliable is this person as a commentator on the life and career of the main character? These are all questions that an attentive reader might well ask, should ask, but they are not answered within the text of this novel. I'm going to read 7 comments on the main character, Pauline Johnson. So the first one is on page 17. I'll just find my page. Here we are. Well, you had to be dedicated, or had to be crazy, to live such a life as that. Couldn't do it for the money, that's for sure. A lot of these places were no more than a crossroads. She played every burg along the CPR. That's Canadian Pacific Railway. One time she had to change in a closet. Had to be careful that the candle didn't burn her gown. A lot of places, there was no hotel. Stayed at all kinds of people's homes. Wife of the reverend, wife of the teacher, wife of the commander of the Mountie Brigade. Everybody was willing to put her up for the night. There was prairie fires and snow slides and bitter cold and searing heat. Church halls and schoolrooms and meeting houses and bars. Some of the audiences were hostile. Some of them ate right out of her hand. When I asked her how she could do it, she didn't reply. She was writing a poem as the train was chugging along, trying to think of the perfect word, I guess she was. Okay, so that's the first comment. Let's go to the next one, page 32 here. There was an aura of the Grand Dame about her. The cream had risen to the top. It was a special event whenever Pauline Johnson came to town. She became the talk of the day. You going to see the show? The local reporter was flattered to be given an interview. She'd been to London, performed for the Queen, had her poetry published in books. And then when she swept out onto the stage, well, you had to be there. Every movement, every gesture, the Grand Dame in her pride and her prime. You knew that you were present at a special event. She made you laugh. She made you cry. She made you proud of who you were. Made you more tolerant. Made you more fierce. Made you more angry. Made you more sad. Thunderous applause as she took her bows. Flowers in season, a big bouquet. Then gone on the train the very next morning, and life would go on. Okay, then on to the third passage, page 57. Here we are. I think she saw how shallow it all was. Accepted as a Mohawk, rejected as a Mohawk, accepted as a white, rejected as a white. Deep down, she knew she was just Pauline. Pauline, the girl who liked to dress up and recite poetry that would curdle up your blood, or bring a smile to your lips, or a tear to your eye. I always felt that was why she played so many characters. She responded to the pretense with a pretense of her own. She would play all the characters that she was never allowed to be. And then on to another one, page 80-81. Now these are all spread out throughout the novel. I'm skipping lots of pages each time because these comments are interlayered with other images in Pauline Johnson's mind. She's trying to figure out something, and so these comments are actually commenting on other images and are being commented on by other images. Let's have a look then. She didn't say that she was penniless, but I got the idea that she was. I told her she could stay as long as she wanted to. She spent a lot of her time down on the beach. Didn't seem to want to talk, just to think. It was windy and wet out there, but she bundled up against the cold and stood alone, gazing out to sea. She took a poster out of her suitcase, all of her accomplishments in colored ink. Said her manager had them plastered all over the province. Said I could have it when she left. It was a very brutal winter. The constant blizzard had her playing to empty halls. She had to pay the rent for all those halls when her trains were delayed. She was thinking of going to New York to see if she could get a few bookings in vaudeville. I shouldn't have blurted it out. I said she was far too good for that. I said that vaudeville was the lowest of the low. After she left, the poster was hanging in her bedroom. The face of it was turned against the wall. And page 89. For the next one. Whoops, here we are. Where are we? Oh, that's 88. Sorry, here's 89. Getting my page numbers mixed up, yeah. I felt I knew her quite well. She was very young when I met her. We met on the canoe club trips to Muskoka. There were 2 or 3 summers there where we both participated. We never met again, but we corresponded after that. I was aware at every stage of her life. Someone said that I was hard on her. Well, perhaps I was. I've always accepted challenges and always figured that others should too. I told her repeatedly that she should never settle for half. She wanted to be a great poet. She would write to me sometimes when feeling low. I'd say, pay the price, stick with it, don't give in. Then when her writing started to slip, when she started writing amusing skits and occasional verse on trivial topics, I told her so. I told her that her books weren't as good as they could have been. I told her the performance circuit was wrong for her. You'll never be a great poet if you're exhausted and traveling all the time. I told her there's always a choice to be made. You have the talent to be a great writer. I told her that in every letter I sent. So I just have to flip a page here, and then we'll find the next one. Page 104 in the book. Here we are. Her greatness was in what she was, not in what she wrote. She was caught between 2 rocks. Sometimes it must have seemed like a vice. She had no choice but to be simply herself. She had no culture to bear her up. Everyone liked her, and she liked them. But they were all standing on rock, the rock on which they were born. She was the girl who was standing on shifting sand. Every time she moved, she was made aware of that. The English liked her, but they saw her as a girl from out of town. The Mohawks never saw her as their own. Excuse me. All these people who gave her introductions, all these cabinet ministers and such, all these people who had her recite in their drawing rooms, they didn't see her as one of them. She was a being from another world, and they expected her to go back when the novelty died. So she never touched the earth. She was suspended all her life. All her life there was nothing but air beneath her feet. She held herself up with invisible wings. She was completely on her own as a human being. Displaced is the word that I would use. Then the last one I'm going to read is from page 113. There's twice as many comments in the novel, but I'm just reading a selection to give the flavor. She was the original self-made person. A scrap of this and a scrap of that. The Indian was more original to her than the Mayfair, because it was the one that was more made up. Some of that costume was from her family. Some was given her by friends. Some of it was ordered from the Hudson's Bay. The Mayfair gowns all came from London, from the season in '94, but the longer she wore them, stitching and sewing and letting them out, why, the more those ball gowns came to be part of her. She wrote the poetry for herself, not the early stuff. That was for someone else, patriotic and sentimental and not all that good. But the stuff she wrote to perform, the stuff that she could recite, that was her. She would stand there in the spotlight, a row of candles or whatever they had, and she would look them all in the eye and read her verse. She was a reciter. That's what she was, not an actress like people say. She was Pauline Johnson, looking them in the eye. Oh, she had a costume on, but they paid no attention to that. It was Pauline Johnson that they'd all come to see. And by God, that's exactly what they got. Now, here's a note that I wrote as I was reading over those passages. These comments, all 7 of them, are being made in the past tense about the life and career of the main character of this novel, Pauline Johnson. Since every word of the novel is an image in the mind of the main character, the mind of the main character is aware of each of these comments, every word. These are perhaps words that have been said directly to her, words that she might have read in a newspaper article about herself, or words that she assumes other people have thought about her, and which she then thinks about in words that are her own, in imitation of what she imagines other people to think or to say when she's not in their hearing. We think in imagery. We could say that the imagery by which we think breaks down into 2 main categories: the imagery which we generate ourselves and the imagery that comes to us from outside sources, such as, in this case, what other people have said about us or what we imagine them to have said. So the premise of this novel is that in thinking about her life and her career, the main character considers all of the images that are printed in this novel. What the novel does not tell us is how accurate these comments are to an outside absorber, to the author or a narrator, or, more important, how accurate these comments, some or none or all, are to the main character, Pauline Johnson. In such a novel, the main character forms a pattern of images, some of which are the comments of people who claim to know her or to have known her in the past. The novelist, myself, prints that image pattern as the text of the novel, and then the reader takes over from there. It is the reader who interprets the image pattern, which is in the mind of the main character, Pauline Johnson. In which case, if the reader accepts the assignment, the reader becomes one more person who claims to know the meaning of Pauline Johnson's life and career. Now, the title of the novel is Pauline Johnson, Know Who I Am, a novel by John Passfield. It's found on Amazon for more information. My publisher's website is rocksmillspress.com, ROCKSMILLS. press.com. There's more information there. On my website, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca, there's not only more information, but 2 free books. A planning notebook, in which I record the writing process, and a journal in which I respond to the finished rough draft, which is comments both on this novel and on my previous novels, my potential future novels, and on the novel as an art form. And lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.